Hi, Danny.
Hello. How's your week?
It has been pretty busy, actually. Good. How about yourself?
Okay. Also surprisingly busy out of the blue.
Hey guys, I'm just walking into the building. And here I am. Hi.
Hello.
I was gonna see if there's ideas for a new fun activity since we have cycled through everybody right now. Kristen came up with the last one. And we can make something up, and I'm not gonna put people on the spot and just have awkward silence. We can have awkward silence anytime. Um, but I just thought I'd get people thinking about it because it's the kind of thing that might pop into your head as you're exercising or driving or something. No immediate answers, though. I feel like it would be nice to do an in-person meeting as well, just for the heck of it. Any other things that people would like to do as a team? No, please. Don't give us more things to do. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat. I just want to acknowledge that everything I have is probably from Ellison, who's done a ton of work on this and a lot of thinking. So yeah, so it's mostly copied from Ellison. And if I got it wrong, the fault is mine. So you can look at it. I can also share, but we've been uh, thinking about communicating to occupants and so on, what the whether they should be concerned. And uh, I know a lot of you have thought a lot about this. I am probably the least qualified person in this area, or certain, at least not the most. Um, but I put this document together kind of in order that I wanted to talk about them. Pa, you just arrived. That means you may not have the chat. So I'm going to put the link in again. And I was realizing that so this is the first time that Kristen and I are including an air quality report to occupants when we do the phase one closeout. And we did not do the occupant or the air quality before when we sent information to the occupants because they'd already gone through the Epic Homes um, program that Ellison worked on before. And she had reported to them on their air quality, and we did not think that one, they needed another air quality report. Two, if it was the same thing, it would be boring. And three, if it was different, we would have to explain why. So we just left it alone. But now we do have some measurements of air quality, and we're trying to communicate that along with their home leakage as part of the thank you for being in phase one. And we have to do it anyway in order to decide whether to move them to phase two. So does everyone have the link now? And should I should I share, would you prefer to share the screen or look at it on your own? I don't think it matters. We're all going to be looking at it. Okay, so speak up if you want me to share at any time so you can see where I am. Otherwise, I'll just assume that everybody's in there. So the first thing is the Omnis measure PM 2.5, TVOC, and CO2. And so that's the information I have. I think the interface measures only PM 2.5. Christian, do you have any other secrets in there?
And then like weather data. That's the only pollutant is.
Yeah.
We're actually measuring sizes, but I don't think it's going to be useful.
Yeah.
Not very accurate.
I'd rather not get into that, but you're reporting 2.5, right?
Yes.
So one of my concerns is that I didn't even know if the red, yellow, green on the interface was going to be the same as what we were reporting, and probably nobody would know, but it bothered me that I could not answer that question. So I'm thinking that we communicate TVOC PM 2.5 and CO2 from the phase 1 report, and then just make clear that we're not measuring TVOC in the rest. This is like a different phase 1 is a different thing. So just I'm doing this like a presentation, but I'm really just trying to collect all the information in one place so we can refer to it and make sure everybody has seen it and does not disagree with how we're doing things. So if at any time you want to say, hey, that's not what I expected, or that seems like we should do it differently, this meeting is for you to share those concerns. Okay, so then most of the presentations that Ellison has done, Ellison, I feel totally weird talking about you in the third person, but just
I'm not the owner of this information
I
either. Like,
know,
I
but
think you've
I've
thought
just
a lot about it too, so don't feel awkward.
well, I've gleaned so much from the way you present and recognizing that I know you've been thoughtful with your engagement and thought about simplifying without being misleading. I know you thought a lot about that. And so I may not know exactly why you've done what you did, but I recognize that there's been thought in it. And so, but I've snipped some things out of out of the reports that you have so graciously shared. So the next topic is the ranges, and I like this one that Will shared that we pulled it from his message, but I think they've used it in a report. And so forget the numbers for now because we'll look at those later. But do we like the colors that are there and the range labels? And like, I don't think we should be measuring hazardous concentrations. I feel like if we're telling people it's hazardous, we should have just told them to leave the environment.
Yeah, this makes sense to me. I think it matches. There's like the EPA has official colors for their AQI, so I'm not sure. Be a hard sell for me not to use the standard colors.
So I have this kind of later down under AQI, so maybe we want to look at that.
Oh, I'm
The
sorry. I thought we were looking at the
AQI is yeah, we were, but and I guess I mean they're sort of approximately similar, um, but the labels are different. Like what the yellow label in AQI is moderate, and then what had been used for TVOC is acceptable. So should we say like to align with EPA, good and moderate? Because like it's just a different but don't take too much out of the fact they're different. I'm happy to put different labels. I just copied it's a graphic, so I can't edit the text. I'll put different labels. So I think green, there should be a good range, right? Like a don't worry range.
I think since we're just doing, or no, we're not just, but for PM, it makes the most sense to me to use almost exactly what EPA has, as if the AQI is, well, the way the AQI is calculated pegs to the worst pollutant. So if we just act as if the worst pollutant is always PM, then we know what it means for PM to be green, yellow, etc. And I think that for PM, I can't really come up with an argument to do anything other than that, just given how much good work has gone into developing the AQI. I think TVOC is just so much less interpretable.
Yeah,
that
let's get to that later. So
Yeah.
let's agree on PM because that's going to be the common thread. And then we can get to TVOC and how we should frame it. Um, I'm with you. So we should call like the mid-range unhealthy for sensitive groups.
I think the other advantage to that is if we use what the EPA has, that's all really well documented. So if we wanted to, if somebody did want more information, we're not synthesizing. It's, they have definitions of sensitive groups for each pollutant and what that means.
Yeah, okay, so we follow EPA, but we can use these colors are the ones that are more similar on the AQI.
Yeah. I think they even have an RGB code for red green color blindness that is like there's a standard red and then there's like a alt red is what I want to call it. That's so that they can still use red, but that it would be, I think, more visibly contrasting with green. Yeah.
Okay, we can check for that. Cool. Okay, and then yeah, so I'm aware that we want to align with AQI because we're telling people you can check your AQI on your phone or whatever. And so we don't want it to be distinct from, or we don't want to say, oh, and ours is a little bit different, right? I think we want to be able to have them plug into EPA and available information as much as possible. That's my feeling.
And I would
Okay.
agree, if we're lucky, they've already been hearing about that and they've already seen it. And this is just reinforcing something that they should already have somewhat of a mindset about. So I think that's the way to go.
Cool. Okay. Anyone else?
I think I might have missed this. Is this in the context of just the report that you're giving them at the end, or is this trying to match to the dashboard, like change the dashboard? I think I'm confused.
Both. I think so. The reason this came up is we're making a report, and I'm like, "Holy cow! What if it's not the same as the dashboard? That would be a big problem that we didn't even talk to each other."
And so in the end of report, we're going to give them AQI and TVOC.
So no, and we haven't. So don't skip to the end of phase 2, although we should do that sometime. What's happening right now is we're doing a short measurement in these homes, and whether or not they continue to phase 2, we're like, well, we have the air quality information. We should tell them what we learned. And we have to look at that information anyway to determine whether they're moving to phase 2. So we have the information, and what I'm trying to set up is like we rapidly process the information, we tell them what happened, and at that time we tell them about our plans for phase 2 so that they have something as a product already.
And is this like the report? Because I mean, it's continuous, their air quality changes. So are you color coding temporally? I guess maybe I don't understand what the report looks like.
We have not shown you the report. So I think it would be helpful to first agree on levels here, and then we can share the report. Kristen has a sort of 80% version, would you say, Kristen? That's what we're trying to finalize here. And we have thought about coding it temporally and also ranking their averages in
Okay.
uh this kind of stack.
I got it. So you
So
could
that
be
can be
like
shared with y'all.
60% of the time you were acceptable or whatever.
No, we're like not doing that. So we're certainly not doing that level of analysis
Okay.
for these houses. What we are doing is saying, here was your average, it was in the green.
Okay, I
And
got
here
it.
is what one monitor, the main monitor in the living space looked like. And that might be color coded or not. We haven't really sorted that out, but we do want to show them that it varies. That is why we are measuring in real time. And I honestly, I don't know what to say about, oh, sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's not bad. And it's a short report, right? Like one page for all the pollutants. So we might say things that we have observed is why I want the time result measurements in there. Like it seems like you have a spike every day at this time, but we're really not going to go into great depth. I think that would be a mistake, but we do want to share what we have. And again, happy to take comment on that.
So, if I understood right, I just want to make sure on the, like, if in the, when you're sharing with them the report and you recognize, you notice that, oh, dinner time, you get a spike or whatever. Are you gonna, and they would see that, is it that the report itself is a standalone product where it would say you have a spike here, this could be due to X or Y, or is it you have a spike here and then you move on to something else?
Yeah, it's okay. Maybe Kristen, do you want to pop up that page? I gave you sharing. Like, I think it's better to talk about it in reality rather than abstract. So it is really highly summarized. And again, this is
And keep in mind, this is very 80% done. Like this just layouts basically. We need to fine tune the text and the colors and all the things. And these are just screenshots from one of Ellison's things. So that's not even accurate.
yeah. So, but Marilee, I think to your question, what we noticed, right? That
Mhm.
something like that, but super simple.
Yeah, I think, and that they can act on. And I was just curious about, like, they go, oh, you know, especially if he's, I mean, would it be reason? I don't, give me a sentence. Sorry. Could you say could be linked to cooking activities? You might use your fan. I mean, it'd be kind of nice to tell them what could take
Yeah.
care of that.
Yeah.
Most
Because
people will be kind of like, oh, but I mean, it doesn't, I don't think that's would be a bad thing to do at all, to give them an action.
yeah, we can do that. Um, Ellison's report, or at least one of them that I've seen, had a whole, like the whole um healthy homes, 8 keep it principles. And I think we're not going to do that. We just want to tell them what we learned. I don't, so I'm a little bit mixed here because I don't feel like we observed their home long enough or carefully enough to diagnose. We're not like healthy home auditors, right? And so I'd be grateful for thoughts from the group here. Like what can we offer people that is a fair representation of our expertise that doesn't overstate what we've done, right? But just say like, hey, you let us in your home. We measured things. These are your data too. Um, so you should be able to benefit from them.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are that since we are not observing them, I would not want to put recommendations next to their data, even if they're generalized. That's why I do think a separate, like, I could be wrong about the formatting, but my belief is that separating it to like, here are common recommendations for common sources of air pollution is the level at which I feel comfortable delivering action. in the absence of information about what they precisely are doing in their home. The recommendations that we gave were informed by survey responses. So we knew things about their activities that allowed us to tailor it maybe one layer down, but we still didn't have like precise data on that Thursday evening, we know you were cooking, so we recommend you turn on your fan. It was
Mhm.
more like you said you have a gas stove. We know gas stoves lead to increased NO2 and you had high NO2. We recommend you use your fan over your stove. So I think generalizations of like common sources or common ways to interpret these data lead us to, give you these common actions, but I wouldn't go more specific because we don't know. That's my, anyway. I don't think that's the only way to approach it though. So sorry, I think I came on a little strident. I'm not that strident.
No, but I think we have similar feelings, right? Like we may not come down in exactly the same place, but there's like a caution about just taking a little bit of data and saying, "Oh, you should do this," because we might not. We want to recognize that the occupant probably knows more about their own activities than we do. And so I'm comfortable saying, hey, you have spikes. And then the occupant is, or it could be linked to this is the kind of thing that we usually see when people are cooking. And then the occupant can make that leap, like, oh, I do cook, And so it is always at 6 o'clock when I'm beginning dinner or whatever. But I feel, yeah, I just have this like sense of it's kind of arrogant for me to measure somebody's house for 3 days and then to tell them what to do. And maybe that's too cautious, but that's how I feel.
I think you're being okay. I propose a middle ground because I think you're being too cautious. I like I like better the way you're saying this could be caused by X. I think it if we can lead them to a logical thing for them to think about, that's not a bad thing. Um, we're helping them to connect data to action or data to behavior.
Mhm.
And um, since and I would say, if you've got this, yeah, it might be that they had guests who cook. Maybe they don't usually cook. And for a week, the grandparents were there and the grandparents cooked every night. That's fine. But I think the way you said, like the way you're saying it, Tammy, to me is a little bit more, it connects what they're seeing, what we're seeing in the data to what could be logical things that are going on. And I don't think that that's talking too far outside it's not talking outside the data you have. And it is saying, it's basically, we used to do stuff where we would ask people things like, what did you do last week? How much TV did you watch? What did you, this, that? How much you use your phone? And then we would ask them, was last week typical or was last week different for you? And
Mhm.
that's actually, that's a better way for us to determine an average. We don't know whether last week, the week that is been measured, that time period is typical or not. They know that, so they can use that as part of their
Right,
interpretation.
right. That's fair too. So I think we just should just say what we observed.
Yeah, we
Um,
observe this, and it could be this. I mean, if you were doing it in person and they asked you, well, what do you think this means? I think you would say, well, it could be X or Y.
yeah, I don't think we're crossing that out, Kristen. I think that's a fine thing to say. It could be linked to cooking activities. So one,
I'm sorry to be a little adamant there too. I apologize.
no, it's all right.
Um,
I don't know. I think we're just sharing ideas. I think we have a sense of where the group kind of is. Like we shouldn't say nothing. We should provide some guidance that provides support for them to take action if they want to.
For this picture, this like these graphics, and I know you were hesitant to show because it's still a work in progress, but looking at it, you don't really ever specify like it makes me think that my kitchen is always in the red. And so somewhere that it's like either the worst case, the average might help. And then also if I look at like the temporal graph next to the PM, and you told me that my kitchen was always in the red, and then I'm like, well, is that my kitchen or is that my living room? So I feel like there's just some like,
Yeah, those are gonna be labeled.
okay.
So I really don't think it's a good idea to like these are graphs screenshotted out of a random thing to put in a random place.
Okay.
Um the so if the kitchen is in the red, I mean that's an average. The kitchen is pretty bad.
Well,
Okay.
that's true, but you never say that that's the average. You
It
just make
will
me
be,
think
it
like,
will be,
okay,
it will
okay,
be. So I
okay.
think we're down at a level of detail that this is not ready for yet. You can have a chance to comment on it. It just isn't right now. But you're right about all those things, but I don't want to have to explain how these are all temporary.
No, that's totally fair.
Um, okay, so I think you have some sense of what we're trying to communicate and at what level. Oh, I wanted to bring up an interesting thing. I know the field team will remember this because there was one home where the monitor looked really bad because it would have regular PM spikes every day. And then I looked at the CO2 data and it looks like a heater is coming on because the CO2 goes up and it stays, it's like a step function. Um, yeah, so that's an in it and yeah, anyway, so we thought the PM meter was bad, but it corresponds to an event every single day. I think those are the kinds of things we can share. It was that made me want to share, like, hey, it looks like something's going on. It's producing CO2 and a burst of particulate matter. Okay, can we go back to the communication? Okay, so what I did with the AQI, I assumed we wanted to go with EPA levels for AQI, and then I went to there's an airnow.gov calculator where you can go backwards from AQI. And so I did that for PM 2.5. And those are the numbers like below the AQI table. So first question, is this what's on the interface? Are these boundaries what's on the interface? Okay,
Yep.
that's what I figured you were doing. Um, but I wanted everybody on the team to be able to answer that question. Because I think a lot of times we do things, we don't fully communicate it or might not percolate up. And then the field team is getting asked in the field by people like, what does it mean when it's red? And so y'all should be able to answer, well, this is what EPA has identified as unhealthy for sensitive groups or whatever it is. Do we have orange on the interface? Is it these same colors on the interface?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I don't remember. I haven't had one in a while, so I forgot. And then this is embarrassing. I should have known this before, but this was the first time I knew that AQI was not linear in PM 2.5. So, sure. I mean, it makes sense because it's a log response, but somehow I thought sure. I thought something else. Okay, so this is it. So these numbers correspond to the PM 2.5 that would produce that AQI if it was the worst pollutant. And we're just saying that we're assuming PM 2.5 is the worst one. And another thing that can trigger it is ozone, and we are not measuring ozone. So this is where our numbers should be when we produce a report. And field team, do you understand where these numbers come from now? Okay, cool. So I think PM 2.5 is more straightforward because there's so much information about it. Okay. And so down below is TVOCs, and I felt like putting them on there just because we have the information. I don't know if y'all think it will be confusing if we report TVOCs and then it's not a part of phase two. We're not protecting the home against TVOCs in phase two.
My bigger concern is I don't believe the TVOC measurements. Like,
Okay.
and it's like none of them are good. I think what's being
Mm.
used is on the better side, but it's just yeah, I just don't believe them. So
You don't think the sensors are good, Christian?
yeah, and I think we know they're not good. Like that style of anything in this price point is just so sensitive, clumps everything together, and is calibrated on one thing. It's
Yeah.
sensitive to humidity. Um, I understand. I think it gives us a relative high, low. I believe them at that level, but I just don't believe much past that.
Yeah, and I got that sense from no, not the sense of the poor accuracy, but from what Allison said too. Yeah, I know it's calibrated. Like we don't know what TVOC that is, and they're more or less toxic, even if we did know some of them are like far more toxic than others. Um, and so I'm of two minds. One is like, well, we don't know what it means, and it's not a very good measurement, so we should just not share it. And then the other thing is, well, do we know if like how bad is it? Like if it's reading high, is it possible that it's actually low?
I might be able to help out with this one. This seems like the most inconsistent measurement on the omnis. Like even when we had some running in the lab for the past couple weeks, and I would take a look at them whenever I was in the lab, and they would
Mm.
often be different by a factor of three or four. I did a little bit of a deep dive into this type of sensor, and what they do is they look at the electrical charge across a piece of metal.
Mhm.
And as that, so it can get anything that's reactive. So it can get ozone, it can get hydrogen, carbon dioxide, anything that will be read as a VOC. And then also as they age, the metal will change because it's reacted with a bunch of stuff. So it's a good low cost sensor, but I don't think it's a great sensor. So I think we could show it to them, and if we could put some kind of disclaimer of like, don't take this seriously. This is for entertainment purposes only. I think that would be fine. Um, I don't think that they're accurate. And I think that in terms of comparison, I think that like they're going to be really, really different depending on the device.
I agree with all of this. Like that's all of those sort of electrochemical sensors are like that. Christian knows more about sensors than me, but I mean, sort of disappointingly cross-sensitive, drifty, all this stuff. So my question is like when I say it's low, is this information useful in any way? Right? If you know like, oh, my home is not very high in terms of VOCs, or maybe you should do some more VOC explanation around your home. Are any of those things valid, given the uncertainties in the instrument? Like, are they so bad that you just shouldn't even measure it?
I guess my feeling is they can give informative information, but there's so many places that they could be reading artificially high or low that although we're going in a direction that's probably correct, when it goes up, it's worse in the home. If we're putting anything that is any sort of language close to it of this might be unhealthy or this might be safe, I'm not sure that I have the confidence in them that I would. So back, I can't remember who said, what would you tell somebody if you were in a home? They asked me. I don't think I would say anything past, well, it went up, so you're probably higher than you were yesterday. I don't believe them past that
Right,
level.
so they're relatively okay. I mean,
Well,
relative to the reading they had yesterday, is what I mean.
or when they go up, VOCs in your area went up. But I wouldn't even say compared to yesterday, it was the same VOCs.
Yeah, Christian, how would you feel about, because I think similarly to you, but one way that I remember talking about this with Epic Homes people, because they would see these high levels, and like I would say when it's higher, it suggests there are more activities that are generating VOCs. And then I would talk about, and I know you can't do this in the report, but VOCs can come from things like eating foods that are smelly, and it can come from cleaning products, and many of those chemicals aren't harmful. So we can't, I would decouple from anything about health. Like
Mm,
they would say, like, is this bad for me? I'm like, we don't have the information to say if this is good or bad. We can tell you that when it goes up, we think there's more evidence of activity that produces VOCs. And then they'd say, well, what does that mean? Right? It's like, for the most part, in a lot of ways, what's happening indoors isn't necessarily good or bad for your health by knowing the activity. You'd have to know the product. And so then I would try to nudge them towards like looking at products, asking for more information about products. That direction of like consumer product protection kind of stuff is not then outside of my domain, but I don't know if you how you
Yeah,
feel.
I feel comfortable with the activity one. I think it's a great one. And
okay.
like to Danny's kind of statement of for entertainment purposes, I think it can be very useful of, hey, you may have just done something. What did you just do that had a big VOC spike? I think that could be an interesting thing for.
Yeah.
I would never feel comfortable personally saying or having something on there that says you're at this level, this is what it means to health, or this is what the numeric
Okay.
is, or
Okay.
So what if we
anything.
just put then a time series of VOCs and say we can't say if this is healthy or not because we don't know what's in it. Leave out the um, the sensor uncertainties, but just say you as you observe this, you might think about what you were doing at that time. Does
Yeah.
that seem
Yes.
like maybe not even put
I wouldn't put anything on the
units?
y-axis then. I'd
Yeah.
maybe have like low to medium. I wouldn't even put high. I feel like high is like just
There's
sends
no
off
high.
these signals of like badness that you can't avoid the connotation when it comes to looking at air quality data in my experience. So I wouldn't put numbers because they could go look up some poor interpretation, or they could screenshot it and they could get AI overview to tell them like, yeah, 1,000 ppb is bad. Like
Mm.
I would rather it be like low to less low or low to medium. But I don't mind the idea of like them seeing a time series as long as there's
Yeah,
nothing
okay.
about it that they could interpret quantitatively. Because
Okay.
I agree with Christian. Even if we had the best TVOC measure, we couldn't say what it meant for their health. Like
Right.
we would need species level data to say anything about any health related outcome. So
Yeah, so I'll try to figure
emojis.
out
Oh,
what to do with
actually, but
with-
then you'd have like bad like
yeah,
are they
no,
just gonna
it
be
has
like
to be like low and
I
less low.
yeah.
We know that lower is green, but we don't think that okay. Your concerns and statements have been heard. We will try to make sense out of that. Cool. Okay, the last one, I didn't put anything on CO2. And Ellison, you had some communication about that, and we haven't delved into that. That's the one we haven't gotten that far, but you did report it. And I think there are guidelines out there for CO2. So can you say something about how you chose them?
Chose the
Chose
guideline level.
chose the colors or the like this one, what is okay to choose colors, right? Is this an indoor air like standard thing, or did you, where
We
does it?
used ASHRAE at the time, so if, I don't remember, sorry, I'm not looking at, is there something in the document that shows what we're using for the home health box study? No, maybe not. For the home health box study, we used red, yellow, green because we were, or green, yellow, red, because we were using that for and all the we wanted to be able to present pollutants for which we felt we could justifiably use green, yellow, and red. That's probably the better way to say it.
Okay.
And then because of that, we only presented PM 2.5 and NO2, nitrogen dioxide, and CO2. And then for CO2, we provide through a QR code, a link to the ASHRAE and CDC documents that what is our yellow range is really the range of what you can find if you look at different documents about what is acceptable. Like the lowest end there, you could, if you were a resident that took our report and had your number, you could find some documentation that says it should be 800 or below, which we felt was extremely aggressive. And then the upper bound was 1200, which is ASHRAE would still say is like elevated. So it's not a standard for indoor air like it was a standard that was the boundary conditions for PM and NO2.
Yeah.
But we felt, I mean, yeah, open to discussion from others. This was a couple years ago. We felt that at the time, especially with COVID being closer, that if people were to like start Googling CO2 levels, they might find guidance that says you need to be at 800. And we didn't want them to feel like that was absolute. And so in the yellow range was like, it looks like you have elevated CO2 levels, maybe worth paying attention to. Here, some things that help reduce CO2.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering because I've seen all kinds of numbers too, and I was wondering like, is there one that caused you to plant your flag in the?
I think it was ASHRAE's like CO or ASHRAE's guidance on ventilation for COVID, and then they were referencing their guidance at the time. I haven't actually I haven't looked in the last like year.
Okay.
Paid close attention if they've changed.
Okay. Because their guidance for COVID was just on, like, it wasn't on the health related to CO2, right? It was like trying to keep a certain number of air changes.
Right. Well, I think that our report had 4 pages. The second page was about the pollutants, and so that is where we said CO2 itself is not the problem. It's a
Right, it's an
proxy for
indicator.
other things. It
Yeah.
helps us understand how, or it gives us some insight into how air is exchanging with the outdoors. And
Yes.
so, that's not, there were still, I think it's one of those difficult things where there are still people that we have encountered that then interpret CO2 as bad because we put it on the page of other things that we called pollutants. So I think the hyper conservative approach would be like, don't report it as a pollutant, like report it separately. But then I think you need some sort of visual break so they don't look at it with the other things that we've just told them are pollutants. There's probably other people on this group that have ideas about how to do that well.
Well, I think we can modify it so it doesn't look like a pollutant. But I'm more curious about how you chose to draw the line. And it sounds like you took a lot of information and there's some support, but yeah,
I'd say it's I feel the least. No, it's not confidence because like I think we use the best available evidence, but what that evidence results in a conclusion is not as firm as an EPA guideline value. It's an EPA standard. It's a
Yeah.
guideline around which there is also debate and some contention. And we
Uh-huh.
didn't feel like we could communicate all of that.
No, I don't think
But we
anybody
did
wants
feel,
to.
and I think that the judgment call that I made was, I feel pretty confident that if CO2 is very high, like above, a couple thousand as an 8-hour average, there's a ventilation stagnation issue going
Yeah.
on somewhere in the home.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel then our actions, were tied to like opening windows or increasing ventilation with a fan. So it felt we weren't putting anybody at risk by being either in one person's eye or one vantage point's eyes, if we were over conservative or if we were under conservative. I think in either case, we were pointing them towards what CO2 does, which tells you about air movement.
Right.
So, yeah, but
Yeah, and I looked at your previous page, but I'm just trying to make it overly concise and therefore inaccurate. So
well,
I might ask you to take a look at what we do. I think we'll try to convey that sense that you're not afraid of CO2, but you do want people are using it to get a sense of what ventilation
mhm.
quality is. And so, okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna be walking.
And I think if that's the way I like Ellison the way you guys did that. Like, this doesn't tell us anything. We're not. This is a sign of something else that's good for you to know about your house, and that you do make that distinction between it's not something to be worried about from a health standpoint. You might put it first, and then you go to the pollutants. I mean, that's one option, because then you haven't even talked about pollutants yet. You're just talking about, hey, let's talk about the ventilation in your house. Did we learn anything there? And then you move into the next section. If you do it the
Yeah,
other way, especially potentially if you're not there to help them to interpret it, often sometimes people might miss that break, but they're more likely to realize that that the things you're talking about in that second part are things that could be bad.
Okay.
In general. So I'd probably put the CO2 first,
Okay.
especially since you've done a lot of measurements of ventilation. You're very interested in that. You're telling them what that
Yeah.
tells them about their house.
Yeah, well, we're going to come, it's going to come, I think, right after the leakage test, right, Kristen? Is it like the leakage is the page before? So then we can refer.
Not currently.
Oh, okay, well, we can mess around with that.
Kind of nice if it was, because then it's like, oh, here's what that means. My house leaks. I've got more of this.
Mm-hmm.
I like that connection.
Right, because then if a house is, I think on that page, like if house is really tight, it does say something like you should pay attention to ventilating your house. Okay. Cool. That's all I have. Anyone else want to raise things that they think we should be thinking about in communicating? And Pi and Erica, especially as you're thinking about the interface, is there anything that is an open question for you in this topic?
I don't think so. I'm straightforward.
Cool. Okay, everyone, have a good weekend. Thanks.